Well, hello, hello, hello. Good evening, everybody. Let me get to my comments here. Good evening, everybody. I am Carmela George. I'm a VA accredited claims agent. I'm so happy to be with you all tonight. I do this the first Thursday of every month. Just come on and take questions about VA disability claims. If you're wondering what a VA claims agent is, it's somewhere in between a VSO and a VA accredited attorney. Um, it's provided for the same veterans law that provides for disability claims, and they just created something called a claims agent that's allowed to prepare, present, and prosecute claims individually instead of as an organization like the VFW and the DAV. So that's what I do, and I love doing it. I love helping veterans, and I'm here tonight again to take some of your questions. There's been a lot of changes in VA world since we talked last month, and so I've already see some questions about some of the changes, and I'll address those tonight. But throw your best at me. Give me a hard question, and let's try to make sense of this VA disability world together. So first of all, let's tell me where y'all are from. Let's see. Dominican Republic is back. Welcome. Spring Hill, Florida. Let's see. Spring Hill, Florida. Jacksonville, Florida. Vancouver, Washington State. Chicago. Well, we're all over the map tonight. Montgomery. DMV. We got DMV in the house. Everywhere, everywhere. So we got a lot of questions tonight are just already being asked. So let's get right to it, guys. Let's get right to it. Starting off with the proposed changes to the rating schedule. Good question here. If a claim is filed under the current rating system for sleep apnea or tinnitus or a mental health issue, will they be rated under the new proposed rates? In your opinion, is this change good or bad? So I've had a lot of time to think about this, and here's what I will say. Um, First of all, if you have a current rating for a condition and you don't touch it after they make the changes, then you will not be affected. Second of all, if you have a claim in when the if the proposals are, because they're still just proposals, if they are to go into effect at some point, which it will probably be a year or two before this is implemented, if ever, and it will probably look a little bit different than the proposal does right now. That's why they allow a comment period. It's just a proposal. And so if they were to go into effect and you had a current claim pending for sleep apnea, tinnitus, mental health issue, they're making digestive issue changes right now, and or anything else that's addressed in the proposed changes, then they would have to uh, do kind of grandfather you in. They would have to rate you on which criteria is most beneficial to you, the old rating criteria or the new rating criteria. That's what the law provides for. And so it would, if you have a claim in and the proposed changes were to come into effect, the VA would have to do what was most beneficial to you. Now, if you file a claim after the changes go into effect, then you would be rated on the new criteria. So it all depends on what stage you filed your claim or what stage the final rule is made, how they interpret the comments that come in and apply them to the rulemaking that they're in the middle of. Like I said, at this point, it's just a proposal. It's all fluid. It could change drastically by the time it's implemented. It could stay very similar to what it is. The VA could hold the line. I don't necessarily foresee that happening. I do think what they are doing with tinnitus and sleep apnea is significant very significant changes from the comments that I've digested so far on the Federal Register is not being received very well. The mental health situation is sleep apnea and tinnitus just aren't. The attempt to take sleep apnea away, tinnitus away, and sleep apnea, the ratings away, is what is happening in my opinion. And I don't necessarily think that's the best thing for veterans. Tinnitus and sleep apnea are real issues. They cause real problems. I mean, at the end of the day, who wants to wear a CPAP when they sleep? It's not sexy. It's not cute. It's not real functional for sleep. Um, I have tinnitus or tinnitus, so and it drives me crazy sometimes. I have to close my eyes and just wait for it to be over. So I understand that it can drive you up a wall, and so those are real situations that deserve, some type of compensation. Now the question becomes: should sleep apnea be rated at 50% if you are given a CPAP? And that's a different discussion for a different day, I think. But I do think it should be higher than 0%, even with the CPAP. And so, are the changes good? Some of them are. I think the mental health changes could be favorable, but the VA is known to cause curveballs. And it really all boils down to what kind of examiner you get. Will the examiner apply the new criteria, which scores you in different areas of functioning, um, the right way? Will they be liberal or a little more conservative? How will they affect these things? How will they be taught to implement these things? There's a lot of variables that come into play. So while it looks favorable right now, we have to see it implemented, just like we had to see the new appeals law implemented. Now I have strong opinions about it, but in the beginning, we were all just sort of trying to digest it. And that's where we are right now. That's where I am. I'm just trying to digest this. I'm going to see what final rule they propose and what, if anything, that they actually implement. That will likely take some time. And then I'll have some, probably stronger opinions. But at this time, I feel some of it's bad and some of it's good. I am interested in the same question if I put intent to file last week. If you are putting an intent to file last week and you plan on filing the claim soon, the proposed rule probably won't take effect, like I said, for a year or two. That's my estimate. The final rule where the rules go into effect. And so you likely won't be affected at all by whatever changes they do make. Okay, new topic. Glaucoma is rated secondary to migraines and low blood pressure. How can I get a rating for diabetes? You either, could direct service connected if you had documentation and service, or you could try it on a secondary basis. Does any of your current service connected conditions cause or aggravate your diabetes? If so, you might want to file a secondary claim. Okay, good questions. FYI, bruxism is no longer a separate rateable condition. Yes, it has to be rated as secondary. That's what the manual provides for. Bruxism has to be rated as secondary. That is true, my friend. Good evening, and thank you for all the service you give. My disabled Vietnam 100% PMT veteran is awaiting an SMC housebound aid in attendance decision. He's bedridden, housebound, and the VA changed the regulatory procedural back to regular claims as his prostate cancer is back. And I pray that he gets all while alive, even though he has dementia. I will know. Why is it taking so long? If you haven't yet, you might want to put in a priority processing request. There's a form for that now. If you're having financial hardship, or he's terminally ill, or it's a really bad situation, you may want to put in for a priority, or he's over, I believe it's 85 at the regional office level. You may want to put in for a priority processing request and try to get that moving. Another avenue that has been working well for me recently to get stalled claims moving is to use the new Vera system. I believe it's the visitor engagement, um, something, I don't know what the R stands for, but application, and the VERA, and visitor engagement reporting application, I think. Anyway, it allows you to set an appointment directly with the regional office instead of calling the 800 number. You can talk to a coach or a manager at the regional office. They will listen to your issue and try to get things moving. It has been working really well for me because I have a lot of claims that have been stalled, like I've been telling y'all, since the summer of 2021. I don't know what happened in July, August, and September, but for some reason, there's a lot of claims from that time period that are not moving. So I have been using the Vera application to call and talk to people and try to get things going in the right direction. So I would encourage you all, veterans can use the same scheduling scheme to schedule an appointment using Vera. Let me find the website and put it up here for you. That might be more helpful. Give me 1 second here. Yes, it's the visitor engagement reporting application. I would strongly suggest that you contact the VA this way. Let's see. There we go. There's the website for Vera. I'm going to post that again. Here's the website for Vera where you can schedule an appointment with the regional office. It is a secure application. I know it's not .gov, but it is actually a VA-run application, and you can speak with the VA, and they will try to get things moving for you. So if you having a stalled claim, your CMP exams are back, and you still haven't had a decision for a while, I suggest that you go that route. Here's another question. Hello, I was service connected for depressive disorder for 50%. How can I connect my migraines as secondary to it? So you need to file a secondary claim. If you've never filed for migraines before, headaches before, if you have never been denied for migraines or headaches, you need to file an original claim for benefits either on va.gov or on a paper 526 EZ form, and write down that you want to claim migraine secondary to depression. If you use the paper form, if you use the va.gov form, there should be an option to choose a secondary condition, and write in there that you want to, you believe your migraines, your depression has caused or aggravated your migraines. And that's the way you make a secondary, you claim something secondary. You have to specifically claim it as secondary. You can't just go on va.gov and file a claim for migraines and expect the VA to know that you intended for it to be secondary to depression. You have to specifically claim it secondary to depression. This is a good question. How many times will the VA keep sending a file request if they haven't received the file? I suppose the question is trying to ask. That's a very good question. I believe they're supposed to request it 2 or 3 times. 3, I think, is the magic number. And that can draw things out. This is why I do not advise ever sending in the medical record request form to the VA. That is the form that you send to the VA when you want the VA to get your doctor's records for you, I always advise that you go get your own records from the doctor and you send them to the VA. First of all, the VA can't pay for any records anyway. The law says the VA will not pay for private doctors' records. So if there's any fee involved in it, the VA is not going to pay that and they're just going to reject the request. But second of all, if you send that form in and they request it from your doctor and your doctor does not answer in 30 days, they're going to send another request. That draws your claim out. If your doctor doesn't answer again, they're going to send another request. That draws your claim out again. So what you want to do to save time is just get your own records, gather all your own private treatment records that the VA does not have and send them to the VA. Do not send them a medical request, records request form or release or whatever it is. To me, that's extremely unnecessary when you could just get files and submit them yourself and save a tons of time on your claim. A lot of states in the house tonight. A lot of states in the house. All righty, here we go. Here we go. Mental health 100% scheduler PNT is not clear. Can we work or not? It's never a straight answer question and probably not straightforward. It is very straightforward. If you are 100% scheduler, permanent and total, you can work. You can do anything that you please. There is no restriction. There is no limit on work. There's no limit on income. You can make what you want to make. You can do what you want to do. You don't have to worry about reporting to the VA. If you are 100% permanent and total, you can work. If you're 100% scheduler, you can work. The only times that there's a limit on your income and a limit on your ability to work is if you are 100% unemployable, TDIU, total disability, individual unemployability. And so if you are TDIU, if you have TDIU, if you have been deemed unemployable by the VA, there is a limit to how much you can make in a year, any given year. And that, I believe, is the poverty limit set by the Social Security Administration or some other government department, the census, whatever it is. But whatever that limit is, the VA always, makes it public. I believe it's like 13,000 right now a year. You cannot go over that if you are deemed unemployable. The thing about unemployability is that you have to specifically apply for unemployability to be unemployable. If you have not applied for unemployability, then you will not be given unemployability and you can work as much as you want to if you're 100% PNT. So it is as straightforward as it sounds. If you are 100% for mental health, permanent and total, you can work. I filed for hardship 3 months ago. How long does it take to get flagged for hardship? This is a very good question. Generally, the VA will flag it for hardship as within a week of getting the request. The problem is the flag for hardship doesn't really move the application along any faster. I have seen situations where a veteran is terminally ill and we let the VA know about a priority processing request or making it known on the claim, and the VA still sat on the claim, and took their sweet time. I'm dealing with a blind veteran now who is 87 years old, and by all means he falls in the category of what should be a priority processed claim and be expedited by the regional office, but they just are have been sitting on it for a couple of weeks. Now I will, as his agent, light some fire under the VA. But what you really need to do is get a good representative on your side who can advocate for you. And if you're in, real financial hardship or any other type of hardship, and your claim really needs to be expedited, they should know who to contact to get that done. And that's the good thing about having a representative. Even if it's just a VSO, it does not have to be an agent or attorney or anybody that you pay. They should have some type of connections that can get things going for you, even if that's all you need. You may not need a VSO to file your claim. You may not need a VSO to upload or turn in paperwork for you. You may just need a VSO to get your hardship request moving and recognized and have action taken on by the VA. And it's okay that you just use them for that. What are the changes for GERD? I'm not specifically aware right now off the top of my head what the changes for GERD might entail. I know they're making it a diagnostic code of its own, whereas it isn't right now. And so that's what I do know. But other than that, I'm not well versed in all the proposals yet. I'm waiting until it's more firm of an idea to digest it fully. I'm service connected for my back and want to claim bilateral knee pain secondary to my back. Should I submit a nexus letter with my claim? Thank you. This is a very, very good question. And there are some people might answer this differently, but here's my thought on the matter. And the approach that I would take. This is your claim. You have to do what you feel is best for your claim. Usually, for a secondary claim where there is medical evidence of the condition, you have a diagnosis, all that good stuff, and you're following it secondary, I do not submit a nexus letter up front with the claim. I don't do it because generally I find that the VA overwhelmingly overlooks private medical evidence the first go around and says that their opinion by their CMP examiner is more persuasive. If you turn in a nexus letter, they are still ordering exams the vast majority of the time. So you will still have to go through a CMP exam, and then the raters usually just dismiss private medical evidence. That's the way it's working on the front lines. It's not supposed to work like that in theory, but in practice, that's what's happening. So my thing is, if they're going to send you to a CMP exam anyway, and it's free, and you're going to get a medical opinion that way, just see if you can get approved the free way first before you pay for a nexus letter, or ask your doctor for a nexus letter. That's my thinking on the matter. If you get denied, then you may want to go back and get a nexus letter or satisfy whatever requirement was lacking of your claim. But you just might get approved, following a secondary claim to your back without a nexus letter. I always like to try the freeway first. That's just my line of thought. My husband just filed for PTSD and sleep apnea and was awarded for PTSD. It was lumped with his insomnia. He was awarded 50% for both. He was denied for sleep apnea. He is going to get a nexus letter to connect sleep apnea to PTSD. Should he file sleep apnea secondary to PTSD or a supplemental claim? Because sleep apnea has been denied before, it must be filed as a supplemental claim. There is no way around that. In order to get the VA to recognize a claim and not just send you a request for application letter, he needs to file it as secondary on a supplemental claim. So your question was, should he file sleep apnea secondary to PTSD or a supplemental claim? He needs to do both. File the secondary claim on a supplemental claim form. Female vet, 100% PTSD, has a dishonorable period for VA benefits purposes. If she files for MST, totally different from the PTSD stressor, could the 100% be in danger of reduction? Oh, yes. I don't think that's a good idea at all. Why? The VA considers MST to be PTSD. So she would basically just be put in a claim for PTSD again when she's already 100% for PTSD. There is absolutely no reason to file that claim, that MST claim. I understand, and I completely understand the validation of that, being recognized by as having happened by the VA can bring. I get that side of it. I understand that perspective. I do not want to invalidate your experience or at all or what you went through. But what I'm telling you is you're putting your rating in real danger if you should pursue an MST claim and you're already 100% for PTSD. It's already terribly difficult to get 100% for PTSD. That's why some of the rating schedule changes for mental health have been proposed to make it a little bit easier for mental health. To get a second examiner to say the same thing is really, really tough. It is not a good idea to file for another mental health condition if you're already 100% for one mental health condition, in my opinion. Rated at 50% migraine and have sleep disturbance or insomnia due to symptoms. Can I claim secondary to migraine and do I need a nexus letter? I think I just answered a nexus letter question in another question. But yes, you could claim it secondary to migraines. Whether you get a nexus letter is up to you. But on a secondary claim, I don't generally advise presenting a nexus letter up front. See what the VA says first and go from there. How likely is getting sleep apnea rated as secondary to sinusitis? I've seen it quite a few times actually be successful. I'm not a medical professional. I can't tell you that the connection is medically valid. You would have to get a medical professional to confirm that. But I could tell you from being a claims professional and dealing with these disability claims every day that I do see it connected. You know, I won't say more often than not, but I do see it granted. Whereas some connections I just don't see happen a lot. So it is, possible. My husband had a CMP for insomnia secondary to tinnitus, and the doctor said that it is not connected, and it also not connected to the migraines and foot, which he is service connected. She said that they are in a different time frame, etiology, physiology, and different anatomical system. So she rejected his claim. Is this true? Okay, so I'm not a medical professional and I can't answer the medical question. But what I will say is that that particular opinion is one examiner's opinion. You have the ability to get evidence that supports your conclusion if you can find a medical professional who will support that connection. And I see it quite often. Mental health professionals write that tinnitus can cause insomnia. I believe there are actually some medical literature on that, or aggravate insomnia. And so that what you need to do is present evidence in your favor. The VA has said, their examiner has said that it's not connected, and it looks like she suspended her, opinion definitively. And so you need to present evidence that it presents a different conclusion in your favor. That's what we call a nexus letter in most cases. You need to get a private medical opinion that supports the claim, file a second supplemental claim, and go from there. Or either do a higher level review and try to argue that the opinion was inadequate by some means. But that seems like it's going to be pretty hard to do given what you've stated here. So a supplemental claim is probably the best route for that type of claim. Whether it's true or not, you're going to have to talk to a medical professional. Is thoracolumbar spine strain the same as low back pain? Yes. The VA considers it to be the same disability and the same thing. If you were to file a claim and you were to say lumbar spine strain, they would process it and send a back DBQ to the examiner and process your claim that way. If you were to file a claim for low back pain, they would get a back DBQ, send it to the examiner, and process your claim that way. So what I'm telling you is whether you call it spine strain or back pain, they're going to process it the same way. And so the VA considers it the same thing. Diagnosed with bilateral trapezius spasms chronic, the shoulder. Also says back pain and STRs. In your opinion, should I claim this? Trapezius spasms, which is the shoulder, or back pain? My suggestion is that and recommendation would be, with the insight that you've given, would be that you file for both. If both are in your service treatment records and you're still having problems with it, it's a current problem, you need to file both claims, both for the shoulder spasms and the back pain. Those are two separate claims in VA world. Why does it seem that the VA is not recognizing obesity as an intermediate step? This is a very good question. And I would tend to agree with your suggestion here that on the front lines at the agency level, the initial raters who are lay people trained in procedure, not necessarily trained in the law, it is that they tend to dismiss or not even correctly order exams for claims that are due to obesity as an intermediate step. For instance, let's say you filed for sleep apnea secondary to PTSD because you believe your PTSD caused you significant weight gain. So you are using obesity to bridge the sleep apnea and the PTSD. Many times, the VSR, veteran service representative, will just order an exam for sleep apnea secondary to PTSD and not even mention the obesity. On the other side, the examiner will just flat out say sleep apnea is not medically related to PTSD. It's two different systems. They have nothing to do with each other. There's no medical literature to support that. And they don't even recognize or provide an answer to your claim that obesity was the middle step, which they should speak to if that's what you have specifically claimed. And so it gets kind of dicey. And I agree with you that it does seem that that is what is happening. I think at the BVA, you're going to deal with a different set of circumstances. But on the front line, if this happens to you, where they don't recognize that you're claiming obesity as an intermediate step, and you've specifically made that clear to the VA in your claim, then you should probably argue it on higher level review. Is bruxism and TMJ two different rated conditions or the same? Well, I believe the VA considers it the same body system, so it can't be rated separately, so to speak. And then the VA manual says that bruxism can only be rated as a secondary condition, not a primary condition. In the claim accuracy review or request, should the specifics of the claims or claims in question be spelled out with all the specifics? Also, where can I direct my VSO to go to for info on the 90 days to file it? All she sees is a 30-day window to file. Thanks. So I think you asked me this question earlier, and I did some research. And the way that I found out that it was 90 days is the director of the association I'm in, National Organization for Veteran Advocates, better known as NOVA. She announced it in, the area where all us attorneys and agents and members of NOVAs communicate, just like the Facebook group. There's an area, on the membership website where we communicate. And she announced that the VA had informed her that the time to file had been extended to 90 days due to the mailing delays. I responded tonight and asked her, is the 90 days still good given that the mailing delays have been resolved? But from everything that I've seen, and I filed many cards, they are still processing in the 90-day window. The 90 days was effective as of July 13th, 2021, and it does seem that from my filings that they are still being accepted within 90 days. The VA has not retracted publicly that they are not doing the 90-day window anymore. So I know while everything on the internet says 30 days, the VA is still processing for 90 days to file it. I would try it. I would try to, if you feel like you have a car and the VA does not process it as a car, they're still going to process it as an HLR, higher level review, and give you the chance for an informal conference. So you don't hurt yourself by filing a car. If they reject it, you're still going to get the chance for an informal conference. So if you feel like there was a clear error made in your case, file the car within the 90 days and go from there. I can't point you to the specific written guidance from the VA because I don't have it. All I have is the announcement from the director of NOVA, but it has been working for me, and I know it's worked for many of my colleagues within the 90 days. So I would still try to weaponize that and use it to your advantage until they announce that they're not taking them, formally announce they're not taking them within 90 days anymore, and it's back to 30. If I had not worked since 2012 due to me having an underlying mental health, which I'm currently 70% mental health, can I file IU knowing I can't provide 3 years of work? Yes, you can. I am being seen by a few doctors at VA. Do I need to request all of these records and doctor's notes to upload to my claim? Or is the system linked with my VA claim? Is it best to include a CD or actual documents instead? So your VA records, everything that the VA has on you besides possibly community care, the VA has. There's a system we use called Capri, and I can get my clients VHA records, and the VA requests them from the system and adds them to your claim when you file a claim. So all your VA medical records will get connected to your claim when you file. You do not have to upload VA medical records. Um, Unless you feel like the VA didn't request them all or they missed something or something like that. There are instances where the VA does not, where you've been to many different VA medical centers or clinics, and they sometimes miss things, um, that are in a sometimes located on another system like radiology reports and stuff like that. But that's a story for a different day. All the systems the VA has, but generally they get everything with the claim, and they send that to the examiner. So you do not have to upload VA treatment records. If you've had community care, I would get those records specifically and upload them, um, because the VA, that community care doctor might not have returned them to the VA yet. I commonly see that problem. If you've had community care, get those records, submit them to the VA. But otherwise, the VA has your VA treatment records. Hope that helps. I'm rated for bruxism that attached to my PTSD. Can I file for TMJ, or is that pyramiding? Yes, you can file for TMJ. That would not be pyramiding with the PTSD. Apparently, some examiner must have said that your bruxism is a symptom of your PTSD instead of its own condition, and that's why you weren't given a separate rating for the PTSD. But they'd be hard pressed to say that TMJ is a symptom of PTSD rather than its a primary condition. So I do think you would get a separate rating for TMJ. It's all about the manifestations of the disability. If two disabilities have the same manifestations, then they likely won't be rated separately. But if they have different manifestations, which TMJ certainly presents a disability picture that is looks different than PTSD. I'm not a medical professional, but from what I can see as a layperson, it looks very different. And I see it rated separately all the time. That would not be pyramided. Good evening. Could you please explain the bilateral factors and how it works? Are individual fingers on both hands considered for this? Thank you. So the bilateral factor is sort of an extra percentage that gets added when paired limbs of the body are both rated. So if both your arms are rated, or both your shoulders are rated, both your thighs or both your hips, both radiculopathy in both legs are rated, then the bilateral factor would be automatically added to your claim. They add it on the code sheet. They don't tell you that it's been added in the rating decision letter, but they add it. Very few times have I seen the VA make a mistake on it. That's a rarity on adding the bilateral factor, because there's a paired extremity. They are going to add the bilateral factor. Individual fingers do not count towards the bilateral factor. But if you had something like both hands, that would. Hope that makes sense. Yes, this is true. I've definitely learned a lot from Miss Carmela Combat. Yep, those are good people to watch their videos. All right, here's a good one. Hi, Carmela. I know everyone's appeals are different, but how long would you say you've seen on average it's taken to receive a decision after your BVA hearing in front of a judge? So, this is a very good question. And to be honest with you, a lot of it depends on the judge. Some judges move fast, some judges move slow, but generally, very generally, I would say it takes 6 months to a year after your hearing to receive a decision. The BVA updated their metrics on their website. Board of Veterans Appeals, BVA updated the metrics on their website last month in January. And it's taken a lot longer than their anticipated goals in every area of BVA decision, whether it's a legacy appeal or appeal in the new system, AMA. They are taking a long time. And I believe that it was like a year after a hearing has been had is the average for a decision now, like 300 days. So it is a significant amount of time after a hearing, especially if you hold the record open to add more evidence that you are getting a decision from a BVA judge. And they just added more BVA judges. Hopefully it speeds up, or they find a way to break through the stagnation that's happening right now. But for now, the BVA is just taking a long time. But I will say this, in my opinion, and generally, BVA decisions tend to be much more equitable than agency decisions. It's something like 70% of the decisions at the BVA get either a grant, like your claims get granted, or either remanded, which is sent back to the agency for some missing component of the claim for more development. And so you have good chances at the BVA. The problem is it takes so long to get a decision. Can I claim PTSD if I was sexually assaulted many times? Assuming that sexual assault was in the military, yes, you can certainly claim PTSD if it would be helpful if you already have a diagnosis of PTSD, but you don't necessarily have to have it to file the claim. You'll file the claim, you'll tell your stressor, they'll verify it or look for markers, and then you'll get an exam. At the exam, talk about your symptoms and what you go through, and you could very well be diagnosed with PTSD on exam. So while it's beneficial to have a diagnosis up front, you could still possibly get one on exam if your stressor or your markers can be verified or identified. So I would file the claim if you were sexually assaulted many times in the military. Do you really need nexus letters for all secondary conditions? I think I answered this a couple times tonight, but I don't get nexus letters up front for secondary conditions. I either let the VA approve or deny and move on from there. Just strategy wise, I found that to be the best situation because they tend to ignore private medical evidence or say the VA's opinion was more persuasive than what you presented, or and all kinds of reasons to dismiss private medical evidence. So I try to use it strategically and at the best moment that it can be presented for the veteran, the most effective moment. Is there a way to nudge a CMP examiner to get their reports done? Had 2 exams. First was great and report filed right away. Second one was over a month ago and not showing up as a receipt. I wish there was more accountability. I wish there were timeliness standards. I heard, mid-month last month that the VA had implemented new timeliness standards for contract examiners. I haven't been able to verify that report yet that I got from a veteran, but it certainly needs to happen. Examiners can really take, or have been in the past allowed to take as much time as they wanted to. And then sometimes the problem is the exam is bouncing between the quality assurance department and the examiner, trying to get it correct before they present it to the VA so the exam doesn't get sent back by the rater for some error that they made. So, it could be a myriad of reasons why it's taken over a month. Might be the quality assurance department instead of the examiner. But is there a way to nudge them? Generally, as an agent, it's very hard for me to make contact and nudge or push a contract examiner. Should be a little easier, but it's increasingly difficult. If it's a VA examiner, they tend to get those reports in same day or a few days after the exam. But a contract examiners tend to take all the time in the world. It's not a good situation for the veteran, and you get anxious and you have to wait and you keep checking. I understand, but there's not a real good way that I found to nudge a CMP examiner at this point. Good question. Does 30% on right foot and 30% on left foot looked at as the same body part? Can I apply for unemployability and be paid at 100%? That's a very good question, and one that I don't have the answer to you right now off the top of my head, but I will look it up. Um, Off the top of my head, I would say that yes, you qualify for TDIU, but I could very well be wrong. I'm going to check on that. Please, whoever this person is, shoot me a message, and I will try to get you an answer as I can. My inbox is on fire right now. I have a lot of messages I need to respond to on Facebook. It's certainly not the best way to contact me, but I do want to answer this question for you. So shoot me a message. Advice for migraine claims secondary to depression. Track your headache, get migraine meds, let your psych doctor know that you experience headaches from depression. You have to establish that nexus. That's very true. That's good advice, Mr. Mullins. I had a CMP exam over a month ago, and the examiner still hasn't finished the report. Myself, LHI, and the VA have contacted them, and they still won't send the info. What can I do? Like I said, I have not found an effective means to get a contractor to do what they're supposed to be doing yet. I'm still searching for it, and when I have an answer, I will let you all know because I'm always looking for solutions when it comes to VA problems. But at this point, those examiners and the quality assurance departments don't have very good timeliness standards, and it's a real problem. So I'm sorry that's happening to you. If the veteran gets a diagnosis DBQ and nexus letter from a private doctor, can we skip the CMP exam? This is a very good question. It's a very interesting question. And what I will say is that each claim and each claim situation and circumstance is unique. I can't answer this question generally because it depends on the very specific facts of the case, how strong your case is, what your medical history and records show, what your service treatment record shows, and you know, generally it depends on the circumstance, your specific individual circumstances, on whether I would advise you to attend a CMP exam or not, given the private evidence you submitted. um, I won't give a general answer, but what I will say is this: the law says that if you do not attend a CMP exam and you don't present a good cause, they are to rate on the record. They are to rate the claim on the evidence of record. So take that as you will. I have a CMP full body exam coming soon. How should I approach this exam? Just wanted advice on this. You might take, I don't generally advise that you take things to exams, but you just might want to have just a small list of everything that's ailing you so you don't forget anything to tell the examiner. If it's a general med exam, make sure the examiner covers all the disabilities that you claimed specifically, because that's generally what they'll focus on instead of the full body, just the things that you claim. So you want to be prepared to be vocal about how your disabilities affect you daily, the severity of them. Be prepared for them to maneuver your body to check things out and approach it, like somebody isn't examining you for a disability exam. Be prepared to talk about how things affect you. Your body language, your facial expressions, everything should match up with pain if you're claiming pain. Um, they need to know what it's like on your worst day. Exams don't generally happen. They don't time them during your flare ups. So they need to know what your flare ups are like. Be vocal about that. Tell the examiner. Now, don't just go in there and start over talking or swear yourself short and that type of thing. The examiner is not there to be your friend, they're there to examine you. But you do want to make a couple points to get a couple things across about the severity of your disability, how it affects you, and that type of thing. Looks like the VA is also making rating changes to the digestive system. I noticed this while checking the Federal Register. I sure would like you to look into this and give us your thoughts on the group page. I will do that. But here's my thing about all the proposed rules that are on the Federal Register right now. What I need all you guys to do that are watching me, what you to do that are watching this on replay is to go comment. Let your voice be heard. There's no better time to express your thoughts on each of these changes than now, while the comment period is open. The law provides that the VA has to address each comment that's left on these proposed rules. So the VA will do that. They will walk through each comment when they present the final rule. And if you want your feedback to be taken into comment on the Federal Register, I do plan to comment myself. That will be public. You will see it when it's there. And I will give my opinion as an agent on what I feel on each of these proposed rules. Because I believe, especially for sleep apnea and tinnitus and mental health, that very significant things are happening that could, in some ways, negatively affect the veteran community. And so I feel led to comment on that at this point, and I will do that before the deadline. But the most important thing you could do, if you're watching me and you have an opinion and you've read the proposed rules and you understand any bit of it, is to go comment on it. Leave a comment, put a comment on the rule, and make your voice heard. I have gotten CMP exam for everything but for anxiety and depression. Can you advise what could be going on? It could be that the VSR, the people that order exams, did not see a link necessarily for what you were claiming and they didn't order the exam. It might be that when it gets to the rater says, oh, why didn't we order an exam for this? And they go back and order an exam or something like that. There could be any number of things going on, various other factors, like they're looking for more evidence or they're trying to get various internal things going on. So I can't tell you for sure what's going on in your case, but present the best picture you can of your disability and the history of it to force the VA to have a duty to assist and provide you an exam. All righty. My husband filed for an Meniere's secondary to tinnitus and hearing loss. That's a very valid claim. I see it all the time. I wish him well. Can I link obesity to my secondary back disability? The documented chronic pain gives me limitation to all my daily activities. So obesity, there's court cases on this right now. I believe it's called Larson versus McDonough or whatever you say the VA secretary name is going through the processes right now. What I will say is obesity has not been recognized in the manual or by the VA as a rateable disability at this time. And so you can't get rated for obesity itself. You can use obesity as a link to an intermediate step to other disabilities. So, for instance, if your back caused you to gain weight and that weight gain caused you depression, caused you chronic pain, which the VA rates as a mental health disorder, it caused you your feet to give out or your knees to buckle or um, your your neck to hurt. You might want to claim those things secondary with obesity as an intermediate step. But at this point, obesity cannot, now I'm not saying it can't be claimed because you can file a claim for anything, but it can't be rated. Rhinitis, secondary to sleep apnea possibility? Yes, it is. My husband filed for Meniere's secondary to tinnitus and hearing loss. He was denied. How often have you seen this rated or more often than not? I see it rated quite a bit. I will say that. But the thing is to have a firm diagnosis of Meniere's going into the exam and having the examiner see that history of having Meniere's and somebody actually having diagnosed it previously to exam. That's what I see with Meniere's a lot. That the CMP examiner won't diagnose it, but if you already have the diagnosis, sometimes they will connect it. So it's a very valid claim, in my opinion. I'm a legal professional, not a medical professional, but I do see it connected a lot of times. All right, I got just a few more moments here, but I'm going to try to answer some questions in lightning speed. How likely is it to connect heart failure to MST PTSD? Should you file secondary claim or would it be better to file a new claim? I don't want to lose or jeopardize my current rating. You don't want to file a new claim, you want to file a secondary claim. Heart failure, secondary to our heart condition, heart pain, heart situation, secondary to PTSD. That's all you want to file. You do not want to touch the PTSD. You just want to file a secondary claim. So a secondary claim, it would be a new claim if you've never filed for a heart condition before. If you've been denied for a heart condition before, then you want to file a supplemental claim. But if you've never been denied for a heart condition before, file a secondary claim secondary to MST and leave it like that. I'm 100% not PNT. I called the VA asking when my next routine future exam was, and they said they didn't have one scheduled. What does this mean? What are the odds of getting PNT granted if I fill out the paperwork? It depends on what disability isn't static. There's a lot of variables here. It depends on the history of that disability, what the next examiner will say. But just because that the route, you should have asked them what on my code sheet, when does it say my next routine future exam would have happened? Just because one isn't currently scheduled doesn't mean that there is never one intended for the future. So those are two different questions, and I'm not sure that you asked the 800 number the right question by the way you phrased it here. So I want you to ask the right question and get a very specific answer. If they don't give you that specific answer, you need to get your rating code sheet, get a good VSO with electronic access to the VA system, get your rating code sheet. It will tell you exactly when your next future exam should be scheduled for. The odds of getting PNT depend on the condition and the history and the evidence that you have that it hasn't improved, it's not getting better, and that type of thing. So, uh, I do PNT claims a lot. I have different strategies depending on the different individual circumstances. So I can't give you one specific one. It all depends on the circumstances of your individual claim. But if you feel like there is a procedure to request PNT that's in the M21 manual. So if you feel like your condition is permanent, it's not getting better, you may want to pursue that procedure. What about illnesses or injuries that occurred prior to service but was made worse during service. I had rhinitis related issues prior to service, but it got drastically worse during my service and time in service and after. Will secondary claims be possible, such as anxiety, headaches, etc.? So the law provides for what's called a pre-existing condition if it was aggravated by service to be rated just like every other condition, with the exception that whatever whatever the level of disability you had coming into the service, they will take that away from the level your current severity of your disability now. So let's say your rhinitis was at a 0% rating level. It was not symptomatic when you came into service. It got worse in service to the 10% degree level. They would take that current 10%, take the 0% away, and they would give you 20%, a 10% rating. Let's say your rhinitis was at the 10% level coming into service, and it's at the 30% level currently. They would take that 10% away from the 30% and give you a 20% rating. That's how the law works. It's called Allen aggravation. But does the law provide for service connection for pre-existing conditions made worse during service? Yes. Can you file secondary claims once you get those things service connected? Yes. Why aren't raters or CMP examiners looking at or giving our private DBQs and Nexus letters equal weight as the exams? Oh boy. I was just in an argument about this the other night. There's all types of reasons. There's a stigma, to be quite frank with you all, because I love you all. There's a stigma against private medical evidence, and it's not lawful, in my opinion, practice or what's going on. Private DBQs and Nexus letters, if they're valid and credible, and they should be given probative weight, assigned probative weight. Doesn't have to be equal weight. Law doesn't provide for that, but it does say assign weight, study each piece of evidence, and assign weight appropriately. So sometimes private evidence is more persuasive than what the VA has presented, and raters should rate that way. But the vast majority of the time, what I'm seeing is a dismissive attitude towards private medical evidence, and it's just not being weighed properly. It's not till you get to the higher level review level or the BVA that it is weighed properly. And that's a real big problem. The VA needs to fix it. They need to do something about it. They need to do better training on private medical evidence. And the raters need to stop thinking that private medical evidence is just fraud. All veterans aren't out here just trying to suck money from the government and get over on the government and exaggerate their disabilities. That line of thinking has to go. Um, it's not proper, in my opinion. Um, I will say that the VA has to be concerned about some level of fraud with DBQs, but and I think the concern led to them initially taking DBQs away from veterans, the ability to use them, or them being public. Then Congress said, "Hold up, no, we want veterans to be able to present private medical evidence so their claims process goes faster," and they made DBQs public again. Um, and so there's this tension between what Congress has intended and what the VA is implementing and practicing on the front line, and that needs to be resolved. My thought on it is that better training needs to happen on the front line, um, and it needs to happen fast, because what is happening now is unacceptable, in my opinion. The attitude and the dismissal of private medical evidence that many times the veteran has paid for. Look, here's my real thought on it. In every other area of law, the plaintiff or defendant is able to present evidence that supports their case. It works the same way in veterans law. The veteran is given the opportunity to present evidence that supports their case. Just like in every other area of law, sometimes you have to pay for that evidence. But that does not mean that evidence is any less credible. If you actually had the exam with the private examiner, they reviewed the records, they're given their opinion, they're a qualified medical professional, that opinion should be weighed equally or to the same degree as the VA medical opinion. But in practice, on the front lines, that's just not happening. That's a real big problem, in my opinion, again, and it needs to change fast. Alrighty, guys, that's all I'll say for tonight. Thank you all for joining me. I'll be back next month, first Thursday in April. I have a special guest with me, one of my attorney friends who I communicate with on various levels, and he does good work. So I'm excited to present him to you all next month in April. I hope you'll join me again. Um, in the meantime, I hope you and pray that your claims go well and that you are successful and that I provided some direction for you. So y'all take care and have a wonderful evening.